Welcome back to the lab. You'll have to excuse the slight delay in proceedings there, a bit of a gap between the videos. Not really a lot to show you. Not really into just gap filling, right? There's some things to show you now. Oh, one of the things that probably just made a funny noise, I upgraded the sound for you. So I did have a good headset type thing. I was using that, I lost it. Don't know what happened. It's maybe at a racetrack somewhere. So then I used a cheap headset, and you guys will have noticed there was a whole heap of cracking and popping and banging going on in the audio. That's not good. Spent the 70 bucks, and hopefully this is a lot better. Something else that's a lot better is the general state of this beastie. A few panels going in here and there. Pedal set. Template sitting there for the other side of the cockpit. We've done this side. Look at this. Look at this. So we've got nearly all the holes done. And I've been quite fussy with it too. All the holes have all been deburred and everything. A lot of people will just drill holes and they won't deburr them and they'll put the rivets in, and that's fine, but that will fail sooner as far as corrosion and stuff than if you deburr them. You can imagine you leave little bits hanging over the edges here. The corrosion will bite into those little bits and start and get carried away a lot sooner than if it's all nice and rounded off and beautiful. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it anyway. So this is rounded off ever so slightly on this edge where it meets this round frame. This will be covered. This will have some sort of vinyl or leather or something like that glued over the top of it. Because when you sit in this car, it's such a small car, we're dealing with, I can't remember the number, it might be 1100 from here to the other side, and there's two people sitting here potentially. This gets tucked up under your armpit. It's a little wee puddle jumper of a car, a little wee thing, not a lot of room. So, and there's one more frame you can see there. I've got to do that row of rivets. I was trying to make up my mind whether I'm going to or not. I will be putting some rivets on here, and I was considering that bonding that will probably be enough to hold that, but now I'll bang in some more rivets. Our mudguard comes through this general area here anyway, so I've got to sit that in place, figure out where that goes, make sure I don't put rivets underneath where the mudguard is going to go. Same with these ones that run down here. There might be a couple of those that get put in there. Otherwise you've got a relatively flat surface onto a flat surface with a couple of little bumps in the way. Things won't sit down nicely. It's all looking pretty good considering where we started from. Not having a crack at anyone there. It's just obviously a long period of time during the build, and some constraints, time and facilities and all that sort of carry. There's a few little tricky things like this frame here. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to show you. There, you'll see it there. It doesn't actually line up that plane to this plane, and of course the other side of it doesn't line up. It's not on the same plane. The things are different. So this panel is a flat panel that we've put in here. It looks really shiny on the phone, doesn't it? Not so much in person. So in there, might be difficult to show you. Can duck this up in there. There's a little bit of there's a battery box in the way, so we can't see it anyway. Anyway, long story short, there's a bit of a joggle going on there to get things lined up and make things work. Over on the other side there, we've got the pedal set in there. And you want to watch the cord on this fancy new microphone setup. And tear it to pieces the first time I use it. Tilton don't give you long enough studs on their fancy pedal set so that you can put the master cylinders on the other side of a firewall. This is only 2 millimeters thick, and we weren't even close to that being flush with these nuts on their original studs. So these are new studs that I've put in there, and they're obviously plenty long enough, in fact too long. Just get away with it with a banjo bolt. How am I going to show you that? There you go, with a banjo bolt onto our clutch master cylinder there. We'll have to do some 90-degree AM3 fittings on here to sneak this past here, but if design work on a computer might have caught that error, but we'll be right. In fact, I could do a bit of a rough job rough. It wouldn't be rough at all, really. I could take this off and get a drift, shape the end of the drift correctly, and give this just a little bit of a tap there, a little bit of a recess to allow the fitting to fit a bit nicer. But I think with a 90 on there, it's not going to hit anyway. I think it's going to be fine. You can see we've got the floors in there and the transmission tunnel panels either side. This one on the top will screw on because the gear lever pops up through here. You won't be able to get the car apart or back together or whatever without having that panel removable. So easier to see it from this side, right? So just some riv nuts through this general area and a couple up onto this panel here. But we are getting there. It is starting to look pretty fancy. What else has happened? What else has happened is I've had a discussion with the owner about shock absorbers. And there are some things in life we can't change and we can't do much about. So weather, politics and roads failing and things like that, we can't do anything about any of those things. But we can do something about these shock absorbers. That looks like it may have been a custom top spring hat, maybe, I'm not sure. And then obviously just a couple of bushes to go into the frame. And then this arrangement down at the bottom here looks like, it honestly looks like an exhaust clamp onto the body of the shock absorber. I'm not sure if that's standard for any particular shock absorber from 30 something years ago, or whether that's a bit of ingenuity that was designed by someone who wrote a book or something else, or it might have been the hack at the time. But we're not going to do that. We're going to get some new shock absorbers. These ones, the bump stops are in perfect condition. They're never going to cause any problems at all, are they? So we'll get some new shock absorbers that aren't leaking oil as well. I'm pretty sure there's a little bit of oil leaking there. You can see that. So we'll ditch those ones. The front ones had a arrangement that these bolt holes here go onto that mount there, and be careful not to scratch. It gives you up and down adjustment for the ride height of the car, course adjustment. And then this is the original top hat, must have been out of the Triumph Herald, I'm guessing, which has been bolted and welded to that bracket. So someone didn't want it to come apart, and it probably never was going to. That would have been all right. I think what's happened is the angle at the top of this top hat compared to the frame, compared to the suspension, has wound up being somewhat out of whack. So here's our shock absorber here. It sits in there. You know, obviously that lines up with a bolt hole somewhere, and here's our spring that goes on top of it. There's some tomfoolery going on there. I'm not sure what the deal is there. A bit of a warming with a gas axe, I suspect, based on the way it's distorted. And I mean, that probably was going to work. It was going to be all right, probably. Long term, ultimately what can happen is you can have a very hard spot in the spring once you've done that, and it may snap at some point in time while you're driving the car, and then this side of the car might drop suddenly by an inch or two. Could result in an unexpected high-speed direction change, which might not be good if you're approaching a corner at high speed. So we'll do away with that whole arrangement and put some coilovers in the thing. With this plan at the moment, I've got to confirm dimensions and stuff. There's also a couple of other little things to deal with. Diff seals leaking. No biggie at all. Obviously, I'm capable of changing a diff seal. It's something that probably needs to be dealt with at the other end of the car as well. I should have thought about it. It's a thing that you just do. The rear main seal on the engine was probably brand spanking new when that clutch went in there 30 years ago, 20 years ago, something like that. There's no sign of it leaking, but the thing hasn't been running. So for whatever the seal's worth, 14 bucks. A little bit of going backwards, I'll pop the gearbox back off and the clutch back off it. Let's change those now before we put all that into the car, and it's much, much harder to change it later. I'd rather just do it now and know it's as good as we can make it than first time they use the car and the clutch starts slipping or the oil starts pouring out the back of the... Nah, we're not going to do that. So we'll get those changed. Also, the front suspension, you'll see that's not powder coated yet. That's quite deliberate because I was contemplating this stuff and some things might need to change there. And I want to do an upgrade on the front brakes. We're going to see what calipers we're going to end up using, but I want to put the same disc rotors, which are sitting just here, Ford Sierra Cosworth 2-wheel drive disc rotors that are going onto the back. You'll see the drums are missing off the rear axle. I reckon we'll just put those on the front as well, all for the same size, because we've got tiny little wee wheels anyway. So I'm going to upgrade this hub to fit the rotors that we've got in there, mount them up nicely somehow, make sure that can all be done without big dramas, and do some sort of an adapter to fit either the calipers we've got, which need rebuilding, which is just there. We have very, very small brake pads in them. It's for scale there. Either upgrade those or get something aftermarket that'll go on there and do a nice job for us. Cool. Geez, I've just about filled a video already and I haven't done any work. I better get something done. Alrighty. You've seen that? Oh, I forgot. Yeah, you've seen that side. But look, there's a panel. There's a trolley of stuff for doing stuff and things. There's the first one of those front panels going on. There's two of those to make, obviously. One for the other side. A little bit tricky. They've got a little bit of a bend through here because the frame isn't what you might expect. The bottom tucks in more than the top. So that one and that one run on the same plane. That runs on a different plane, so you've got to do a double bend on it. Bend it in, bend it back out. And then just to make it even more tricky, down the end here, you've got to joggle over the top of that, unless you go halfway along the frame that's there. You know, it's a section of this frame, you go halfway and you butt the two together and rivet on each side. It makes the frame quite weak with a lot of holes in it, so I've joggled it over the top like that. It's perfectly fine. Looks beautiful. If it's done right, it looks nice. So, and of course I made this panel as well. So, come to think of it, there's not actually a lot more to go on this side of the vehicle. There's a small panel that goes in here, which will take half an hour or something by the time you do all the rivets and everything. So we'll put that panel in there, sit the mudguard on, figure out where that goes and start making those holes. That's just about this side done, as in it's all there, except for the bonnet and the cowl that goes over top of that. This is probably a long enough video, and I think is it Wednesday today? I think it might be. We missed out on Monday. It was a public holiday. Why don't we throw this up? Thanks for watching. Cheers, bye.